3. Don't let stuff own you. According to my friend Earl Wilson, people can be divided into 3 groups: haves, have-nots, and have not paid for what they have. Unfortunately, more and more people are being added to the 3rd group every day. People are becoming enslaved to the desire to acquire. It's one of the reasons the United States and Europe are in such dire financial straits. They keep borrowing to offset their spending habit. Author Richard Foster writes, "Owning things is an obsession in our culture. If we own it, we feel it will give us more pleasure. The idea is an illusion. Owning things doesn't bring real satisfaction. In general, if you try to feed emotional or spiritual needs with material things, all it does is make you hungrier for more things. It doesn't satisfy. However, if you meet those needs appropriately, then you can be content with or without a lot of possessions. No one should ever become a slave to his stuff. No one should make acquiring more just for the sake of having more his life's work." There is a story in the Bible about a man whose stuff controlled his thinking and his life. His selfishness allowed him not to see the big picture. He was consumed with gathering wealth and felt this would go on forever. However, his life was cut short and he failed to make deposits into the lives of others. Author John Ortberg writes of him, "He devoted his life to the wrong things." If you were to make a list of his priorities, it would look something like this: what matters most? 1. Harvest large crop. 2. Build bigger barns. 3. Achieve financial security. 4. Eat. 5. Drink. 6. Be merry. 7. Remember not to die. And of course, the last item is the really hard one. Sooner or later our souls will return to their maker. And the things you have stored up, whose will they be? In 1889, millionaire industrialist Andrew Carnegie wrote an essay called Gospel of Wealth. In it he said that the life of a wealthy person should have 2 periods, a time of acquiring wealth and a time of redistributing it. The only way to maintain an attitude of generosity is to make it your habit to give your time, attention, money, and resources. Richard Foster advises, just the very act of letting go of money, or some other treasure, does something within us. It destroys the demon greed. Just the very act of letting go of money, or some other treasure, does something within us. It destroys the demon greed. Richard Foster. If you want to be in charge of your heart, don't allow possessions to take charge of you. The question is, do you own your stuff or does your stuff own you? Contributors take the stuff they own and use it as an asset to make this world a better place to live. And they do this regardless of how much or how little they have. 4. Don't let people own you. When Margaret and I were newly married and I was starting my career, we had very few resources. Basically, we were scraping to get by. During that time, we became friends with a couple that was financially well off. Each Friday night, Jack and Helen would take us to a fine restaurant and buy our meal. It was the highlight of my week, since Margaret and I could not afford to eat there. Over a 2-year period we received many wonderful benefits of this friendship, and we were very grateful. After 3 years in that position, I got an offer to become the leader of a larger church. It was a tremendous opportunity with great advancement and potential. When I announced that I would be leaving to take it, Jack was not pleased. I'll never forget his words, "John, how can you leave after all that I have done for you?" It was in that moment that I realized Jack was starting to slowly own me. He was keeping score, and I had no idea. It was a wake-up call. That was the day I made a choice. I would always try to give more than I received in relationships. And I would never keep score. From that day forward, I never let one of my leaders pick up the check at a restaurant. I would be on the giving side of life whenever possible. Obviously I still receive from others. I've already explained that. I am blessed beyond words for what others have done for me. But I didn't want to give away control of my life. It's hard to give yourself away when someone else owns you. I wanted to be able to value people with no strings attached. A giving life should be liberating to yourself and to those you help. I consider the success of my day based on the seeds I sow, not the harvest I reap. Robert Louis Stevenson. 5. Define success as sowing, not reaping. Novelist Robert Louis Stevenson said, "I consider the success of my day based on the seeds I sow, not the harvest I reap." That should be the way we judge not only our days, but our entire lives. Unfortunately, most people sow little and expect to reap a lot. Their focus is on payday. Why is that? Obviously there is the issue of natural selfishness. But I think there's more to it than that. My friend Nabi Saleh, who owns Gloria Jean's Coffee, once told me, after sowing there is a period of time when it looks like nothing is happening. All the growth is below the surface. People often don't recognize that, nor have they anticipated it and planned for it. They become impatient, and they give up. After sowing there is a period of time when it looks like nothing is happening. All the growth is below the surface. Nabi Saleh in his book Half Time, Bob Buford writes about an executive who was seeking advice for how to live his life. Buford writes, "A friend of mine who had been president of a large publishing company once sought out a world-renowned Zen master. After unloading the tremendous business of his life onto the Zen master without provoking much response, he decided to be quiet for a moment. The Zen master began to pour tea into a beautiful oriental teacup until it overflowed the cup and spread across the grass mat toward my friend. Bewildered, my friend asked the Zen master what he was doing. The Zen master replied, 'Your life is like a teacup, flowing over. There's no room for anything new. You need to pour out, not take more.' In point 2, if you are sowing only for quick returns in life, then you will usually be unhappy with the outcome and unable to keep giving and living while waiting. On the other hand, if you sow continually and abundantly, you can be sure that in due season there will be a harvest. Successful people know this and focus on sowing, knowing that reaping will eventually come. The process is automatic. If you live life with the intention of making a difference in others' lives, your life will be full, not empty. I love the way George Washington Carver expressed the idea. He said, "No individual has any right to come into the world and go out of it without leaving behind him distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it." That's something we should always keep in mind. No individual has any right to come into the world and go out of it without leaving behind him distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. George Washington Carver. 6. Focus on self-development, not self-fulfillment. One of the more important things my mentor, consultant Fred Smith, taught me was never to focus my life on self-fulfillment. He said, "Self-fulfillment thinks of how something serves me. Self-development thinks of how something helps me to serve others." With self-fulfillment, feeling good is the product. With self-development, feeling good is the byproduct. What's the main difference? The motive. Self-fulfillment means doing what I enjoy most and will receive the most strokes for doing, while self-development means doing what I am talented and uniquely fit to do, and that becomes my responsibility. Chasing self-fulfillment is a bit like chasing happiness. It's an emotion that cannot be sustained. It relies too much on circumstances. It depends on a person's mood. In contrast, you can develop yourself regardless of how you feel, what circumstances you find yourself in, your financial situation, or the people around you. 7. Keep growing to keep giving. Whenever people stop actively learning and growing, the clock has started ticking down to a time when they will no longer have anything left to give. If you want to keep giving, you have to keep growing. If you want to keep giving, you have to keep growing. Sometimes people stop learning because they become complacent. They believe they have grown enough, or they want only to make the most of what they already have in terms of skill and knowledge. But when that happens, they start to plateau and then decline. They lose their innovative spirit. They begin to think about being efficient instead of breaking ground. They cut costs instead of investing in growth. Their vision becomes very limited. And instead of playing to win, they start playing not to lose. The second thing that happens to people who stop trying to actively grow is they lose their passion. We all love doing what we're good at, but being good at something requires us to keep our skills sharp. Less skill leads to less enthusiasm and eventually discontent. If we reach this stage, we start looking behind us, because that is where our best days are. We think about the good old days, the glory days. At that point, we're only a few short steps from obsolescence. Nobody wants to learn from a has-been. What kind of contribution can we make if we get to this point? I want to give until I've given all I have. To do that I must keep growing until I can grow no more. A legendary contributor in December of 2009, a legendary personal growth teacher, writer, and mentor died. His name was Jim Rohn. As a kid, Ron grew up on a farm in Idaho. After graduating from high school, he went off to college but stayed for only a year. 1 year of college, Ron said, and I thought I was thoroughly educated. Ron took a job as a stock clerk at Sears, but he lived from paycheck to paycheck. By age 25, he became discouraged. He hoped to find a better path. A friend of Ron's invited him to attend a seminar presented by J. Earl Schoaf, a motivational speaker and salesman. The main message: work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Your income is directly related to your philosophy, not the economy, and for things to change, you must change. Point 3 Schoaf mentored Ron for 5 years, encouraging him to develop himself and pursue his dream of creating a better life for himself and his family. By age 31, Ron was a millionaire. Ron might have been a success story few people knew about, but then his life took an unexpected turn. A friend invited him to speak about his accomplishments at a Rotary Club meeting. Ron accepted and gave a message that he called, "Idaho Farm Boy Makes It to Beverly Hills." It was a hit. Others began to invite him to speak. At first he spoke to service organizations and to high school and college students. But he soon realized that people were hungry for what he was willing to teach. In 1963, he launched a conference, Business Point 4, during a career developing people that lasted more than 4 decades. Ron wrote more than 24 books, spoke at more than 6,000 events, and developed around 5 million people. And during that time he never stopped learning and growing. He observed, the greatest gift you can give to someone is your own personal development. I used to say, if you will take care of me, I will take care of you. Now I say, I will take care of me for you if you will take care of you for me. The greatest gift you can give to someone is your own personal development. Jim Rohn. One of the greatest measures of Ron's impact is the number of high-profile authors and developers of people who consider him a mentor. At a tribute in his honor that was held in Anaheim, California, on February 6, 2010, guest speakers who honored him included a who's who of speakers and mentors: Anthony Robbins, Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Chris Whittier, Dennis Waitley, and Darren Hardy. Point 5 How was Ron able to help so many people grow? And to help so many who became well-known teachers and mentors in their own right? By continually developing himself. He understood that growing yourself enables you to grow others. He lived by the law of contribution. George Bernard Shaw, the writer who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1925, understood that the best use of a human life is in the service of others. He said, "This is the true joy of life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Point 6 If you want to make your life burn brightly for others and future generations, keep growing. Applying the law of contribution to your life. 1. What is your underlying desire in life? Is it self-fulfillment or self-development? Are your efforts designed to make you feel good, or to make you be your best? Is your goal to be successful, or to achieve significance? Are you trying to achieve so you can feel happy, or are you trying to put yourself in a place to help others win? These distinctions may seem subtle, but they really make a difference. Trying to feel fulfilled is a never-ending restlessness because you will never be completely satisfied with your progress. Trying to develop yourself is a never-ending journey and will always inspire you, because every bit of progress is a victory, yet there will always be new challenges to excite and inspire you. 2. Make sure that no person owns you. Make a list of the key people in your life. Now think about each relationship and determine if you are mostly the giver, you are mostly the taker, or the relationship is even. If you are primarily the taker, then you need to make adjustments so the other person doesn't have power over you. How do you do that? By making the effort to outgive the people in your life without keeping score. You can do this not only with your family and friends, but even with your employer. Make an effort to give more work than your organization pays you for. Not only will the people you work for and with value you, but you will add value to them. And if you have an opportunity to move on to bigger and better things, you will be able to do so knowing that you have always given your best. 3. I have one final application exercise for you in this book, and that is to put people first in your life. Write down your top 3 to 7 goals and dreams. Now write down the names of the most important people in your life. Be honest with yourself. Which comes first, the people, or your goals and dreams? If you are like I was early in my career, my agenda was first. Fortunately, I realized very early in my marriage that I needed to put Margaret first. That opened the door for me to be less selfish in other areas of my life. Then when my children came along, I had to put them ahead of many other things. The longer I live, the more important people have become to me. At this stage of life, nearly everything I do, even related to personal growth, is motivated by a desire to help others. Make the decision to put others ahead of your own agenda. Put your family ahead of your own agenda. Put the development of people at the workplace ahead of your own advancement. Serve others instead of yourself. Commit to it, and then invite others in your life to hold you accountable. And remember, sometimes the seeds you sow take a long time to grow. But you always see a harvest.